Surprise, we're here on a Tuesday night. How you guys? I had to check the calendar. It is Tuesday, right? Used to doing this on Sunday, but we started doing some midweek stuff here and there, and let's do it. We got a lot to talk about tonight. We're gonna have some fun talking to our friends in Chicago, and then also second half of the show, we're gonna go down memory lane and talk about that team that didn't end so well, but came into the league at the same time as Chicago Fire, the Miami Fusion. Both teams came into the league at the same time. One had a little more success than the other, as in they're still around, right? So lots to talk about tonight. We're going to obviously take your voicemails and your chats, whatever you want to do. So everybody in the chat, make sure you say hello, and we'll get to you in a bit. But before we do all that, let's say a big thank you to Caneswear. Caneswear is located in Davie, Florida, south of 595 on University Drive. The best prices for Inter Miami gear you'll find in town. Best prices for sure. You don't want to wait in that massive line at the stadium that there is now since Messi. Go to Caneswear. They got a big store. No lines. Just go get your GOAT gear and your Messi shirts and all your stuff you want, and get a Campana shirt. How about that? And go to Caneswear. Also, you want to buy or sell property? Contact Mia Rodrigues. She is the GOAT of all realtors. 754-269-6923. You can also see her on TV, on Selling Florida, the American Dream. So congrats to Mia. So, all right, everybody. No, we're not going to wait any longer. Let's get right to the meat and potatoes of everything, and let's welcome in our friend Alan from Chicago. How are you doing tonight, Alan?
I'm breathing. I'll say that.
That's an interesting way to start off. I'm breathing.
I'm breathing. That's it's the best you can ask for. So,
if you're above ground, it's a good day, right?
Amen. I say to that. Yeah.
and Miami Fusion. Miami Fusion. Got that in my brain. Inter Miami and Chicago are just barely above ground right now with that line that is the line that everybody is always concerned about, and that is the playoff line. You guys are a little bit better shape than we are, but both of us below that line for the playoffs. Both of us having a bit of a interesting season. You guys having lost your head coach in, I think, May, right?
I guess I can't remember Ezra being in this, being the coach for this season. I'm just so used to, for the past few seasons, of Frankie Klopas coming in as that interim head coach, that I've forgot about Ezra. Honestly, I'm sorry, Ezra, but I'm
that's
just
okay.
so used to seeing Frankie there.
I have to say this just because of my co-host loves to use this joke and beats it into the ground. But I'm gonna guess you found something better than Ezra. You don't get it. You're too young. I think we had these kind of jokes with you last time.
We did, and it's still gonna fly over my head.
Better than that's 90s. What, late 90s? Late 90s, I think. That
was when I came in this world. So
it was a hit song, band, I think. But so I guess you did find something better than Frankie Klopas, legend within that club. He's been the head coach before. I think he's been up in the front office for years now. So how do you feel about your Chicago Fire in the season so far?
It's a typical roller coaster ride with the Chicago Fire for the past few years, and especially this season. We started off, fairly shaky, and then of course that is the reason why we ended up getting rid of Ezra. We've had sort of a little bit of a high, little bit of a low with Frankie when he once again stepped into that interim post, and then in the month of July, we had this fairly big high of winning games, even if it wasn't the best way of winning them. We were winning games. We were in that playoff spot. And then all of a sudden, the month of August hits, and then everything just collapses. And we haven't scored goals. We weren't winning games, of course, not scoring goals, anything. We were like, what is going on? all of a sudden the roller coaster just took a hell of a dive
Yeah, didn't you
downwards.
guys have like a 7-game winless streak or losing? I don't know if it's winless or losing, but 7 games?
Pretty sure, and we haven't scored until one of our recent matches against the Revolution, where we didn't win. It was 2-2, but goals were actually scored. So we were like, "Yay, we scored a goal!" At that point, we actually we had a sign with us in the supporters section where we were like 0 goals, 0 games won, 0 points, and all that fun stuff. And then when we finally scored, we were like, "Sick! Quick, someone get the Sharpie!" We actually
Change it.
scribbled in, putting in 1. We scored 1. So, and then we ended up scoring another. A bit unfortunate how that 2-2 happened. But then, moving on to the most recent game that happened last Saturday against New York Energy Drink, where we actually did get the 1-0 win. Even if it was in the most spectacular fashion, we essentially overfed Red Bull with their with possession, which is something that the Red Bulls aren't just used to. They're not used to playing a possession-based game, and it confused me a bit at first. I was like, "What is Frankie cooking?" And then I was like, "There we go." And we forced them to make mistakes. The red card happened. Beautiful Kutsias header, and points are secured, and we're still in the balance. We're still in there, so we'll see what happens.
Still in the hunt for sure, just like Inter Miami, where it's so tight on the East. I think you could definitely make a big argument this year that the East is stronger than the West. It's a lot tighter. I think the teams in the East are, and I'm so used to being a longtime MLS supporter. I'm used to the West generally being better than the East for a long time. But this year, I'd say the East is definitely better than the West. So it is tight. 1 win, 1 loss, you're jumping or you're falling.
Mm-hmm. It's tight, especially with the teams in the middle and in the bottom.
Right.
Those positions are constantly changing. The battle for the midfield, and of course the wooden spoon, constantly changing. And of course, with the addition of LM10 to y'all's side, that midfield has really changed as well. So excited.
Sam Soto says that the West, I feel, is still strong though.
They still got
a little bit, but
a little bit. It's definitely fallen off a little bit.
Besides the big players in LAFC and a couple of others, it's definitely dropped off. I mean, you're used to seeing like Kansas City being a strong contender every year, and they've dropped off this year as well.
They've dropped off.
But Chicago is struggled for a while to be relevant, to be good. I mean, you guys have, you moved from Bridgeview because thought, hey, let's go to Soldier Field. We'll get more fans. From what I see, it hasn't really worked out. It's still struggling to get some support in Chicago. And I'm curious, why do you think that is? Is it because there's, been ownership turmoil, crappy logo changes? Finally, you guys have a decent one, but didn't need to change the first one. First off, it was classic.
No, absolutely.
But
absolutely. Classic MLS logo.
Yeah, what do you think it is? I mean, are you seeing an uptick this year? Forget about this game that we're about to talk about in a minute, but do you see an uptick this year in the fact that they moved to Soldier?
I think it's still yet to be. I think it's still too early to be called. This is year 3? Technically, you could say 2 because 2020 was where the move actually happened, but of course, no one was there because of COVID, and then it was limited numbers. With the spaced out seatings, and then finally, letting fans back into full capacity. There's been games where people have showed up. We actually, a while back, I'm pretty sure this was near the end of the 21 season against our game against Real Salt Lake, we had like 35,000 people in there. So
That's
bit
good.
more than half. So it's possible that people can come out to these games. Of course, sometimes the numbers are a bit low because maybe it's a midweek game. The beginning of the season where we've had a ton of our home games have been incredibly cold, dreary, just wet, and ton of rain and whatnot. We had there was a game where there was a thunderstorm warning and they had to evacuate everyone to the
that happens
concourse,
here.
so.
That happens here every game. Every game we have, almost every game we've got a rain delay. It happened just this past weekend, rain delay, and everybody off the stands, and we're huddling up for hour and a half, whatever it was.
Mhm.
That's a pretty common occurrence down here. So we get it. Weather plays a part, but sometimes those kind of things are just kind of excuses, because when the team is good, people will show up. When there is like I think Sam Soto is sitting here saying inconsistency. When there's consistency, people will show up, right?
Like I've mentioned, that roller coaster, it's going up and down sideways. It's going everywhere. And if there's something the Fire are consistent at, it's being inconsistent.
Yeah, I get it.
And that's a question we always ask. And that was something we asked in our previous episode at Men in Red. What Fire are we going to see when it comes to certain games? What Fire are we going to see? Are we going to see the Fire that can control the midfield, that can really push the ball forward into the final third? Are we going to see the Fire that's going to collapse under pressure? Are we going to see the Fire that is just going to be passing around the back in that little U shape, as I like to call it? What Fire are we going to see? We genuinely don't know. Even when the team sheet is out, we're what Fire is going to show out and what players are going to show out. And especially in the back line, and really specifically in those wing back positions, such as Johnny Dean, Miguel Navarro, those kind of players. You have games where, especially in the last game against New York Red Bulls, where Miguel Navarro and Johnny Dean had fantastic games. And then you have other games where they are just super inconsistent. So genuinely, consistency is something that we're lacking. And when it comes to going back to, in terms of like getting people into Soldier Field and the relevancy, Chicago is a city that has 6 major league sports teams as well as 2 women's sports teams. And a lot of those other teams have solidified themselves in Chicago sports history. And unfortunately, where the Fire had success, which is the beginning of MLS and the beginning of the Fire in general, it was fairly unknown, not because, it's mainly because MLS was just irrelevant when it was originally created. Back when the World Cup was happening, my dad, it was when our family moved to Chicago. My dad was like, he would remember news outlets and medias just glazing over and just making fun of the World Cup also being in Chicago and being in the United States. This was like, oh, soccer is a low-scoring sport, blah, 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 and stuff like that. That's changed. Things have changed of the past 25, 27 something years. And unfortunately, when that's happening, the Fire have sort of backed down. And it's kind of the case for a lot of the OGs in MLS.
Yeah. There's several OG fan bases, Dallas, Colorado Rapids, New England Revolution at times, that really do struggle. Whereas, but it's interesting, getting off topic and everything. But what's interesting is when you do a good rebrand, a new ownership change like Kansas City, all of a sudden a new fire is lit because they were playing in front of empty crowds as well. They rebrand, they build a new stadium, and all of a sudden it seemed to work for them. Question in the chat here from Ed Bartra. Doesn't Soldier Field have artificial turf or some type of hybrid? I think it's grass, right?
It's grass. It's straight up grass. The only problem is that it's archaic in the way they handle the grass. We don't have sprinklers or any sort of like proper drainage systems in there. You will see before the game, like after the players are done doing their warm-ups and in halftime and everything, you will see a team of 10 something people coming out with a giant hose and spraying down the field. There's no sprinklers built in there. And that's why, especially when there are Bears games going on, the Fire's also playing. And third, if there's a concert or something like that. I remember after there was a Rammstein concert at Soldier Field and the Fire playing right afterwards, that grass looked dead. So just the way the grass it's grass. It is natural grass, but the way it's being maintained is a bit archaic. Like this actually happened a week or something ago where a bunch of equipment was actually stolen somehow. Like a bunch of like John Deere like stuff was actually stolen from Soldier Field. I think $100,000 worth that like is used to maintain stuff. So yeah, there are sprinklers and the drainage isn't great. That was a message I got sent by Tim. So thank you, Tim. Yeah. He also mentioned, but it's better than Miami's.
On Wednesday night, drainage or no drainage, the game must go on, and it's a heated game with or without Messi. Both teams vying for that playoff spot. It's, I think, a must-win for both teams, more so for us. We feel like this is a winnable game. Obviously, you guys probably feel the same. First off, let's talk. You guys sold a boatload of tickets, assuming Messi was coming to play there, and he's hurt. He's injured. That happens. There's no promises in pro sports that your favorite player is going to come. In reality, it's probably a good thing for Chicago because it potentially could have been a very pro-Miami crowd with, I'm assuming, a large Argentinian community somewhere in Chicago. I don't know how big of a Argentinian community there is, but when you sell that many tickets, I think there might be some Argentinians in the area. But what is the general consensus there as far as Messi not playing? People, I mean, so much so that Chicago Fire had to roll out a benefit plan offering people money.
Yeah, no. First of all, if people aren't going to be there for Messi anymore, they're going to be for the absolute Chicago legend that is Johnny Dean. Absolutely. That's who people are going to go out there to see. And like you mentioned, people are going to go there to see Messi, but they're not going to be there to see Miami. They're there for Messi, maybe not Miami. So if Messi's not going to be there, they're probably going to turn.
I don't know. Look, when we were in Dallas, it was a mix, but that Messi crowd was very loud. New York Red Bulls, it was a pro-Miami crowd because all those Argentinian fans decided to go buy themselves those cheap knockoff Inter Miami pink shirts, So you never know, really, until it happens. I mean, the Messi brand, the Messi name is so big. I mean, you didn't sell 60,000 seats because, Chicago.
All I'm going to say is that in that last game y'all had against NYCFC, fans left the moment they realized Messi wasn't in the lineup. He wasn't even on the bench in Fort Lauderdale.
But they'll wear the pink shirt in the short term.
If there's something about Chicago teams is that even when we suck, we're loyal.
Chicago Cubs,
right? White Sox, Blackhawks, Bulls, Bears, the full.
I mean, the Cubs had such a long history of being bad that it was like 100 years of never winning anything.
More than 100 years of not winning the World Series. All of a sudden they won in 2016. Right? Yeah, I mean, hey. And like you were mentioning, the Fire definitely branded this game as come see the Fire take on Messi and Miami. Yes. And they did put out a statement saying the Chicago Fire are excited to host Inter Miami. While we don't know yet the official status of Messi's availability, as there's never a guarantee that an athlete will play, we understand that many of our fans may be disappointed if they don't get the chance to see him for the first time, and we're excited to welcome them to the Fire family and give them an opportunity to be a long-term fan by creating a wonderful fan-focused atmosphere. They go on to say that they'll be offering credit towards new season ticket memberships or for single game tickets. Of course, they've already mentioned over 61,000 or sold out have been already distributed, and this is a great response from the Fire.
It sure
first
is.
Of all, because they understood. A lot of fans,
a lot of fans down here wish we would have gotten similar support when Messi didn't play and prices were overinflated. I bought tickets to the U.S. Open Cup. I have season tickets, but that was not part of my season ticket plan. So I also had to pay above average. A $40 seat is now $250. So we also had the same thing, but our ownership group didn't give us this. But I would say this is a great benefit also because, like you said, it's offering a $250 account credit towards new membership. So you come in, you buy into the Chicago Fire brand, you come back next season, we'll give you $250 if you buy in. And if you don't want to buy in, we'll give you $50 towards a future credit. So credit towards a future game if you don't want to do season tickets. I think that is a great move. It shows the fans they care, but it's also making sure that those people that came in are here to see the Fire.
And that's just a great thing from the ownership. You know, Joe Mansueto is doing what he can to make the Fire something to be
It was a
proud
good
of,
move.
even if it hasn't been worked out on the pitch exactly.
Right.
And here's the thing, even when it comes to any team, any sports, anything, you go to one game and your perspective is changed. I originally became a Chicago Fire fan because of a name, and that was Bastian Schweinsteiger.
Yeah.
My dad's a Bayern Munich fan. We love, Bastian Schweinsteiger. And when we heard that he's coming to Chicago, we were like, absolutely, let's go to a Fire game. Let's go and see Bastian Schweinsteiger with the Chicago Fire. I went to one game and I went in Bastian Schweinsteiger in the Chicago Fire and I left just Chicago Fire. And that's what the Fire are going for. That even if these people are coming in to see Messi or to see some of the other names like Busquets or Alba,
Well,
they will leave.
No Alba.
No Alba. Okay. If they came in to see Busquets or just anyone, or if they came to see DeAndre Yedlin, or maybe Brick Shea is going to be making an appearance as well somehow.
No, he's done.
They're going to leave Fire fans. And you mentioned when it comes to relevancy, the Cubs and the White Sox have finished the season on a low. The Bears, no one wants to talk about the Bears right now. Blackhawks NHL season is just barely starting. We have Connor Bedard, but he's just growing, so he's not going to change the franchise overnight. Bulls, nothing has changed on that roster. So this is the time for the Fire not only to become relevant in terms of on the lakefront and the people showing up on the lakefront, but just relevant in Chicago. The time is nigh right now. So
yeah. So let's talk about tomorrow's predictions and thoughts on what do you think your chances are tomorrow for a Fire victory? How do you think you guys match up against Inter Miami and realize Inter Miami, you're going to see a lot of our young guys. You're going to see Farias. You're going to see Królikowski. You're going to see Noah Allen. A lot of younger guys are going to be in the lineup. So what are your thoughts on your chances?
We are used to having younger players in the lineup and actually doing an incredible world-class job. Brian Gutierrez, Chris Brady in goal. Those are our young players that have slingshotted to the starting lineup as young players. And of course, we're used to that with other players such as Mauricio Pineda, one player who recently left, Gaga Slinina. We're used to having those young players really show up. And we actually talked about this in our last episode on the Men in Red 97 podcast. We'll see what happens when that starting lineup is announced. Because like you mentioned, Alba isn't going to be there. Messi's probably not going to be there as well. So we'll see.
Messi's probably not even going to travel. He's probably, because if he's not going to play, he's not traveling.
Hey, everyone wants to see. When was the last time he was in Chicago? Because he's played, I think, twice now in Soldier Field with Argentina. So
yeah, I think it was 3 times according to your website's article.
Yeah. Apparently Messi was on the plane, from what I'm being told.
It's possible. Yeah. That would make me happy because I'm a firm believer. And even if you don't play, you're on the team, and he makes a difference just being on the bench because people play better just with him being being there. So I would love, and it also shows the support that you're part of the team, whether you play or not. But he hasn't traveled in the other games that he didn't play. So, but if he did get on the plane, that's great news. At least people in Chicago will have that opportunity to get a Messi sighting. I'm telling you, people get excited for this stuff. I see it every week now.
Oh, absolutely. And whatever happens in terms of lineup, who is actually going to play and what side of what we're actually going to see on the pitch is going to be a spectacle. It's going to be an absolute spectacle.
Sure.
The attendance is going to eclipse the 39,500 people that saw the Fire draw the Revolution 1-1 after the U.S. national team drew 1-1 with Poland. That actually had DeMarcus Beasley featuring in both games. It's going to be a spectacle. Fans are going to be entertained one way or the other, whether it's a Messi sighting, whether it's something fantastic happening on the pitch. Either way, this is going to be a good one.
Your fellow Chicago fan here says Shaqiri, Costillas, and Kamara will get it done.
100%. We actually have an article that was recently posted by our editor and a writer in chief, Alex Calabrese. Big game player that is Xherdan Shaqiri. He
Shaqiri's
usually
good. Yeah.
he always it's safe to say it's safe to say that he hasn't gone exactly as we wanted to in his time here in Chicago, but he is a player that shows up for big games. And if there's an ever a moment for Xherdan Shaqiri to make a splash, it's right now. Kutsias, he is definitely on a high. You could have, when you go back to highlights of him scoring that goal against Red Bulls, you could see a smile that cannot be wiped off his face. He is going to go into that game absolutely buzzing. Kai Kamara, he is definitely a good off the bench, get things done kind of
Especially for
player.
being
So those
100 years old and playing for 20 different teams. I mean, the guy's
Oh,
amazing.
absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, just think of how the game ended, of this fixture, how it ended over in Fort Lauderdale
I
a
mean,
few months ago.
I know there's some Miami fans that have over the years complained that we only go after the international players and we don't look at somebody like a Kai Kamara, who's a MLS journeyman. He's been on so many different teams that, and he produces everywhere he goes. He doesn't last anywhere long, but he produces everywhere he goes.
That's sort of how the script changed in between the seasons that Rafael Wiki was here to when Ezra, and now of course once again Frankie Klopas. We've gone away from too many international signings. That's something that Rafa Wiki's team has done, and we were like, let's look local. Let's look at players who are in the league, players that are experienced with the league. One player who also scored against y'all in the first fixture, unfortunately he's out for the rest of the season, being Chris Mueller, a ton of experience with Orlando previously before coming back. I mean, and of course Kai Kamara, 1 goal behind Landon Donovan. So even though he's at that age where he shouldn't be playing the full 90 minutes.
I mean, how old is he now? Do you know? Upper 30s. I mean, I could Google it real quick, but I'm just curious if you knew off the top of your head, that being a Chicago fan, he's got to be upper 30s, 36, 37, right?
He's 39 years old, man.
39! Holy cow, and still producing in this league. The guy's a maniac, and especially now, you bring him off the bench. He doesn't need to be a starter. Bring him off the bench and kill it. Yeah, I've always been a fan of his. I'm not a fan that necessarily he might play against us, but what do you? So we're both trying to make the playoffs. We both need to win. What are your predictions for the score?
Predictions. Okay,
Nobody likes giving predictions.
I know, especially this late in the season and for this kind of game. I could low-key see this ending in a 1-1, in a 1-1 situation, but I can also see this ending either in a 2-1 or even a 1-0. Either way, it's going to be close. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah. I'm with you. I say 2-1 Inter Miami. Of course, I'm going to go Inter Miami. But neither team can. Well, I'll say we can't afford a draw. You guys can afford it more than us because you're above.
We can afford, I think, maybe like one more draw. One more.
This could be it, right?
But we don't want it. Of course, we gun for gold.
In the chat, One World One Goal says 2-2. Sam Soto says 2-3. Chicago wins.
Sam knows what's up.
Of course, he's going to pick that. We know he's a Chicago fan here. So. Good stuff. Well, Alan, it's been fun. It's going to be an exciting match. I wish I was there. I've heard that tickets prices have dropped to some extent. Some tickets have gone as low as $40 now that were probably way overpriced. That's one of my favorite things to do is look at what the prices are for away games whenever Messi's playing or whenever Inter Miami's playing, whenever there's a potential of Messi sighting. It's always interesting to see what kind of price hikes. Right now, as they've kind of talked about, of all the teams, Chicago as a team has benefited the most from Messi right now, it seems like, because they've sold the most tickets, and money is everything. So him being in the league has helped everybody. It's helped you guys. Hopefully, the support is a little little leaning towards Miami then.
Yeah, well, we want to see, of course, there's two sides to this coin that we've been talking a lot at Men in Red ever since the rumor started happening. The first side of the coin is that, yeah, Messi's going to bring in numbers. He's going to bring in people into the league, relevancy into the league.
Yep.
I mean, also we're paying for it as well because of the Apple TV and the Adidas deal. So, we have a stake in that too, but the two sides of the coins, one being that people are going to look at the league, people are going to come into the league, and what the Fire is hoping is that that big number that comes in looking for Messi or some other big name come out with the Fire. The other side of the coin is that we don't want those people to be leaving the moment they see Messi not in the team sheet, like we saw in that game against NYC. We want people to stay. We don't want people to leave, essentially. We don't want to return to the MLS of retirement league, quote unquote.
Hey, look, they leave here. At this last game, Messi did not play, and there's people sitting next to me on both sides that at halftime they left, and they clearly told us they were here for Messi, and they were kind of upset. But look, if you're in Chicago and you don't know, then it's on you. You got to do your own little bit of research. It's on you. If you're going to the game expecting to see him and he's not there. So, all right, best of luck to you guys. How can everybody follow you, Alan, and everything that Men in Red 97 do?
Of course, Men in Red 97. We have our website, meninred97.com. We have a ton of incredible articles, whether it's match previews, post-game, comments from the players, interviews, as well as match analysis, all that fun jazz on meninred97.com. Of course, MIR97 on social medias, Instagram, Twitter, or X, however you call it. And of course, our podcast, the Men in Red 97 podcast, on wherever you get your podcasts, including on the website as well as our own separate hot takes, as we like to call it, podcast.
Oh, I was on the wrong site. I was on the Chicago site. I meant to be on the Men in Red. That whole time, I meant to be on the Men in Red. I clicked on the wrong one. Sorry about that.
It's okay. We all make mistakes once in a while. So yeah,
there we go. Now we'll show Men in Red 97. Website. It's a good site. If you're into Chicago, it's a good site.
If you want to know anything that's happening around the Fire or Chicago soccer in general, ton of articles that are there about the Fire, as well as some of other Chicago soccer stuff going on around there as well. And of course, our podcast, the main one, Men in Red 97, MIR 97. That's where I'm host of, and of course, our other one, Hot Takes, where you'll hear some rather hot takes.
All right, great stuff there. Thanks so much, Alan, and best of luck to you guys. And I think it's going to be a 2-1 victory for Inter Miami.
Keep thinking that.
All right, thanks a lot.
All I'm gonna say is you'll see me in the supporters section playing my silly little drum. You'll see me there. If you're watching the game and you look to the supporter section, you'll see me there.
All right, thanks so much, Alan. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. Thank you for having me on. Vamos Fire. Come on, you Men in Red.
All right. All right. So it's time to make a change here. Hang on a second. Before we get too far, I got a costume change here. Hang on here. We got to get prepared for this next conversation here. Oh, now all of a sudden everything starts working. My switcher starts working. All right. Okay, here we go. We got the old stuff out here. We're ready to go. All right. So thanks, everybody, for hanging in for the conversation with Chicago. Now we're going to go down memory lane and talk some old school stuff. And it should be a lot of fun. We're going to talk Miami Fusion. If those of you that are too young to remember, Miami Fusion were the original MLS team in South Florida, playing at Lockhart Stadium, the same location where your Inter Miami currently play. And, they came into the league with the Chicago Fire back in in 98, I think it was. The league started in 96. They came in 98. I was there for all the games. I didn't have season tickets, but I bought every single game, went to all of them. And, so go down memory lane, and no better person to talk to than our guest here. Now, please, everybody, welcome in Joe Shaw. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Peter. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for being here. So I see you're repping one of the what was that? That was the third jersey, I think, if I remember. I have that one as well.
Yes, the 2001 third jersey. And then behind me, I've got the 98 original white alternate. And then, I got a little scarf for the 25 for 25 show we've got as well.
Nice. Yeah, the funny thing is, I never bought the away jersey, the white jersey. I have the blue one. This one is not an official jersey. I wore this one because I don't think many people even remember this shirt. This was, one of their fan shirts. It wasn't a shirt that they wore on the field, but it looked cool, Yeah,
no, it's good. And I don't know why they didn't make that an official one, because it is poppin'. It's really nice. You've got the checkerboard, the subtle checkerboard, right? It's really nice. I like it.
We also brought out some old, I don't know if you've ever seen this. Look at this.
Oh, there it is. Yes. Get a good shot of that. Too. Oh, my goodness. That's awesome.
We're old school Fusion fans here on Football Miami TV. Ed and myself both go way back as being, going to all the games. Ed even went to the protest once the team folded. I didn't, because at the time I was about to get married. I had other things on my mind. But so Joe, I gotta know. I mean, you're rather young, I think, to be into the Miami Fusion. I'm curious what got you into the Miami Fusion, why you decided to do a podcast all about the Miami Fusion.
Well, first of all, you're really kind. I believe that I've aged well, so that's nice. But 25 years ago, when the Miami Fusion kicked off in MLS, I was 11 years old. I was a ball kid at the Cotton Bowl, as I grew up going to the Dallas Burn games back in the day. So Dallas Burn, now FC Dallas, was my team of choice. And the reason that I decided to do a podcast about the Miami Fusion is for a couple of reasons. So one, I mentioned I was a ball kid at the Cotton Bowl. The first game that I was a ball kid for was the 8-1 thrashing that the LA Galaxy gave the Dallas Burn. And the one goal that Dallas scored was an Olympico by Damian Alvarez. And I was at the end where I was behind the net throwing the balls in, and I saw the ball arc over and into the net, and I was immediately hooked and in love with soccer, with MLS. So for me, MLS was how I fell in love with the beautiful game, and my love has grown from there. In addition, Jim Rooney, former captain of the Fusion, Jim Rooney, is a close personal family friend. Yes. His brother Al used to play minor league hockey in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And then my dad worked for that team. And so I got to know Al very well. We kept in touch. We met Jim when he came down with both the Fusion and the Metro Stars, and later the Revolution. And so I've always wanted to tell sports stories. And so it felt like a little bit of serendipity with it being the fourth year of Inter Miami. Miami Fusion lasted 4 years, 25 years since the Fusion kicked off. There's a lot of exciting change that might have been happening, and now we know is happening in Miami. And so it felt like, let's appreciate what's happening in current day, but let's also take some time to appreciate what happened 25 years ago that laid the foundation in a lot of ways for the excitement that we're able to tap into with Inter Miami today.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was a crazy fun. I mean, you never got an opportunity to go to, I imagine, a game at Lockhart Stadium. You're old enough to go, clearly, but still, You're young. You're probably around my son's age. I also have aged well.
Yes. I was going to say, I can't believe you would have a son this old.
So is Jim Rooney. Jim Rooney is a show friend, a friend just outside of the show as well. We got to know him well when he was assistant coaching for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and then also head coaching for the Boca Raton Football Club, which I was somewhat involved with at one point. But Ed, my co-host, saying that's awesome to have you on the show. Those of us, and of course, there is no bigger Fusion fan. I put this comment up before, but there is no bigger Fusion fan down here than One World, One Goal. And she's thanking you for all your efforts. She loves it. She's Mrs. Diego Serna. To see, the excitement that was that first game, that first Miami Fusion game, because growing up down here, I grew up going to that stadium and watching the Fort Lauderdale Strikers and that's in the 70s. And I didn't go to every game because my family just couldn't do that. But we went to, on special occasions, we'd go see, Nene Kubias and Ray Hudson and Thomas Rong and all these greats. And then it kind of dies off, but then it comes back again a little bit. They hung on by a thread here and there. But then all of a sudden, MLS comes in with big promises, and it's going to be a big deal. And we sold out that Lockhart Stadium. There's pictures, and I know you've seen them, that it was an amazing atmosphere to be in that stadium, after so long watching, teams struggle on that field. So, and then to have it all just yanked away. It was, when things were starting to move in the right direction, league was not in great financial situation. So the common misconception, and I'm sure you spoke, and I've seen you've interviewed a bunch of people, so I'm sure you've gotten all the background, that the common misconception is that soccer failed in Fort Lauderdale. Soccer failed. MLS was not interested in coming back to South Florida because of Fort Lauderdale. Only interested if it was in downtown Miami. Well, guess what? We're back in Fort Lauderdale. But and it's not failing because it was not the community. It was just the fact that we had an ownership that did not have a deep enough pockets to withstand those lean years in MLS.
That's right.
So
No,
what are some of the I know, like I said, you've had a bunch of interviews with a lot of different people on with Miami Fusion. What are some of your favorite stories that you've heard that take place during those good times or the bad times?
So first of all, I appreciate you setting the stage, Peter, because I think for a lot of people that are probably tuning into your show for Messi discussion or Inter Miami current discussion, right, may not know or appreciate the fusion that was here before, which did lay the groundwork in a lot of ways. But I would say what I say on the show is it's an oral history of this magical team that played in South Florida for 4 seasons. And we talk about the good, the bad, and the unbelievable stories. Now, I would say some of my favorite are the unbelievable stories, one of which that immediately comes to mind. Gabe Gabor, who was on staff with the Fusion for 3 of the 4 years and is still working for MLS based in South Florida today. He tells a story about how he had to go pick up Carlos Valderrama when the Fusion signed them. And it was at the airport and no one had a car. And this isn't when Kaká signs for Orlando City, right? This isn't when Messi comes and arrives by charter plane. No. It is, hey, Valderrama's here. Can someone go pick him up at arrivals at the Fort Lauderdale airport? So he finds an intern that has a beat up Toyota Corolla, and he takes it to the airport to pick up not only Valderrama, his wife, kids, and luggage, and they're sitting on top of each other's laps. And he's just like, I'm driving the superstar of MLS and the Miami Fusion in this beat up Toyota Corolla. Oh my God, what is happening right now? And it's like that's old school MLS right there. You would never see that today at all, but it happened, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And those, I've heard those. We have a voicemail, and if you guys want to leave a voicemail, 786-474-4435, we'll get to them. It was post Miami Fusion, but still, teams came down to South Florida to do preseason training, and Colorado Rapids came. And at that time, we knew the coach from Colorado, Fernando Clavijo, because he had ties down here, lived down here, and also Pablo Mastroeni. And I was talking to Pablo, and I was almost in that same situation. Pablo was having, I don't know, I don't remember the entire thing, but he didn't want to go on the team bus. Something about the time they were leaving, and I'm talking to him about Miami Fusion stuff, and I'm trying to convince him, hey, come back here and retire in South Florida. We'll get an MLS team. And he tells me, hey, I still got a house in Coral Springs. I was this close. He asked me for a ride. I was this close to giving Pablo Mastroeni a ride to their hotel. So those days were going on for quite a while. It's a more recent thing that now MLS is flying in private jets, and there's security and all that kind of. It was very willy-nilly back in those early days, and that was part of the charm of it, though.
It was. No, and to your point, you mentioned Pablo. Another funny story, when the Miami Fusion played in the U.S. Open Cup in 2000, they played a team called the Mid-Michigan Bucks, a PDL team in Saginaw, Michigan, and there was an issue with the plane when they boarded, and they got off, and Pablo had told the guys, I'm not getting on the same flight. For whatever reason, Pablo didn't really like flying, didn't want to get back on the plane. So they went ahead and got back on the same plane, but they didn't tell Pablo it was the same plane until they were on board. And then the captain comes over the intercom and is like, all right, everyone, thank you so much for your patience. We're ready to go. Here we go. And Pablo looks up and is like, is this the same effing plane? And they're like, and he's like, I'm out of here. And he gets up and leaves. He just leaves the plane, leaves the Fusion. And Ray looks at Gabe and says, go get him. Go get him. So Gabe runs out after him and they let the plane go and they get a different flight to Detroit. They rent a car. They spend a day in Detroit. It's Pablo and Gabe's day in Detroit. It's like Ferris Bueller's day off. And then they drive all the way down to Saginaw, Michigan. That's wild. Like, just wild. So another great Pablo story.
Before I get to One World, One Goal's voicemail, because she's hitting me up in the chat saying, hey, I left one. We'll get to it in just a second. There is a story that Ray Hudson told us, and I got to download one of our old podcasts that was just audio only. I need to download one of those and grab this sound bite because it was Ray telling us a story. And basically, we asked Ray, do you have any good Diego Serna stories? Because Diego Serna and One World, close your ears, you may not like this. He was known as a bit of a prima donna. Right. He had a bit of a reputation. She will argue with me about that, I'm sure. But, he did have a bit of a reputation. And so we asked Ray, do you have a good Diego Serna story? And he said, yeah, and basically his story, it involved Jim Rooney as well, because at the time, Jim was the captain. And basically, I'm going to butcher the story, but basically he was saying that he is your baby. And he, the better he does, the better we all do. He is your baby, and you will go and you will change his diapers, and you will do whatever it takes to make him comfortable. If you got to change his diapers, you're going to change his diapers, Jim. And basically, he called Jim into the locker room. Jim's in his tidy whities or whatever, and telling him, you will change his diapers. And Jim, memory serves, did confirm the story in a conversation I had with him. But there's so many good stories with the Miami Fusion that it was a much looser time. Also, after every game, they would go to a local bar with the fans. And, you could have a chance to sit there and have a drink with Eric Winalda or, whoever. So lots of good times back there.
Yeah, that was the Tudor Inn. A little shout out to the Tudor Inn. I don't
not
believe
remember the name of the bar.
Yes. Well, so that's what's been interesting about a lot of these episodes is you'll hear anecdotes, right, from one person about the bar that people will go to, and then later on you'll talk to someone that's like, "Oh, that was the Tudor Inn. We knew the bartender there. The bartender was so and so, right, and whatever." But yeah, it's been fun.
All right, let's get to a voicemail from One World, One Goal, the biggest Fusion fan I think I know.
It's time for your voicemail.
Hello.
Hey, Peter and Uncle Ed, and wanted to welcome Joe Shaw to the show. This is Natalia, One World, One Goal. So sorry we're traveling and moving and all these other things going on, so me and Diego are going to miss the event, but we'll definitely keep working with you on all the ideas we've talked about. Joe has done an amazing job talking to all the past players, takes you right back to the time and you feel like it was yesterday. And we're super excited to see what he does next. Hopefully they turn this into a book. We'd like to, try to start doing interviews, maybe getting a video compilation and getting our own little story, a video story on Apple TV would be amazing. So just want to say shout out to Joe, all the hard work he's put in. And we love you. Love the show too.
Some love
Vamos
there from One World, One
Fusion.
Goal. Oh, I didn't know. I thought she was done. But yeah, it's funny is she mentions a Apple TV special on unfortunately, I think MLS looks at Miami Fusion and the Tampa Bay Mutiny as failures. I think, unless you know differently, are dead in their eyes. I don't think we're going to hear a whole lot about it. I mean, it's hard to find highlights of the Miami Fusion. You could find some of the Tampa Bay Mutiny, but not much on especially on like the the Apple TV archives. They'll show some things here and there, but not much on Miami Fusion. It seems to be a kind of a dead brand in their eyes.
So one thing that I'll say a couple things to that, Peter. So one, I think time heals all wounds, right? So here, what I can speak to from being in Dallas, I think post rebrand, which kind of coincided with when the Hunts bought FC Dallas, there wasn't a lot of discussion to the Dallas Burn, and then definitely not to the DFW Tornado or the Dallas Tornadoes in the NASL. And then that's changed. So in the recent past, the captain's armband features both the Dallas Burn logo as well as the Dallas Tornadoes logo in conjunction with FC Dallas. And then this year, Dallas's secondary jersey is a Burn-inspired jersey. I never thought I would see that retro kit ever again, right? So I think I would say never from that instance. What I would also say is as Inter Miami continues to build a legacy and continues to build out their own history, I think they'll be a little bit more appreciative of what the Fusion did to lay the groundwork. I think when a team is not necessarily winning and not necessarily building a positive legacy, it's hard to hear people reminisce about the 2001 Supporter Shield team that won in the Miami Fusion. However, the more that you win and the more that you build out that legacy, it's, oh yes, let's appreciate the team that was here before. Let's talk to the fans and let's get insight into what the culture was like here and how we can continue to tap into it. But to your point, I think right now Apple is very forward thinking. And what I would like to say, if anybody from Apple is watching and or listening to any of this, what I would say is the best way to continue to get fans, especially new fans, to buy into the teams in their markets is to introduce them to the rich history and stories that existed before they were fans. Why do you think people got so excited about Manchester United and Liverpool and Arsenal, right? They dug into the histories of these teams that are successful. And without the history and without the legacy, then it's just the flavor of the month. Where is Karim Benzema going this month, right?
Sure.
But with the legacy, then you can appreciate, oh, there was a team that was in Miami. They went away for a bit. A new team started, and we're continuing to add trophies to the trophy case.
Yeah, and the Moss brothers did say at one point that even at Lockhart, and they did not hold true to this, that there would be some sort of shrine or some sort of photos or something to the legacy that was Lockhart Stadium, the teams that have played on that hallowed ground. So far, you expect at certain hallways or something to show some photos or something like that, and that hasn't happened. However, they do talk about a Miami Freedom Park there being some sort of soccer museum of some sort, which is where I hope there is, a corner for Fort Lauderdale Strikers, which as much as I like the Fusion, I think the Strikers even hold a bigger part of my heart because they came and went several times. Fusion was a very short blip, right? But I didn't go to every Fusion game. And then the same thing, Inter Miami should buy both names. And just so they have them so that they can use them for throwback nights or just for the history of it all. It is part of, I always say, the soccer graveyard of South Florida. We have a lot of teams that have come and gone. But, of course, we hope that Inter Miami is here for long term. But, you cannot forget the past. And those were some fun days. I mean, I remember, going to Lockhart Stadium they would have for 2 years in a row, they had a preseason tournament. And the preseason tournament had 2 games every night from different teams in MLS. And it was free. So I'd get off of work, I'd run over to Lockhart Stadium and see, even if I missed half a match or whatever, just see whatever I could see. And I watched like DeMarcus Beasley as just above a teenager, probably was still a teenager, running up and down the Lockhart field. You saw the Fusion as well. It was these kind of tournaments that just that won't happen today, but it did happen back in those Miami Fusion days.
It would be nice for there to be a continued appreciation for the history and for the fans who have been in South Florida and have continued to stay in South Florida and are still fans of Inter Miami and will continue to be there. I think what would be nice, and I would say this if folks from Inter Miami or Inter Miami staff, right, are listening, it would be nice to have a history of South Florida soccer night at an Inter Miami match next season. Let's honor the folks from the Toros, the Strikers, the Fusion, and of course those that were part of Inter Miami that maybe have now retired. Gonzalo Higuain seems to be around, so that could be a nice tie-in, right? From all the way back to the Toros, all the way up to Inter Miami. But not only just honor them, but allow folks to wear their jerseys of the team that they were most passionate about. You would see a wonderful sort of cascade of colors in the stadium, pink mixed with the yellows, right? Mixed with the stripes of the Strikers and on and on. That would be nice. And I think it would be what feels to me like a little bit of a low effort gesture that would go a long way towards the community.
And I get the fact that they don't want to do it right away because they're still building their brand. They're building the Inter Miami brand. But having said that, if you're ever going to do it, technically, in theory, if Miami Freedom Park gets built in time, 2024 should be the last season or part of 2025. You know, they plan to open Miami Freedom Park in 2025. Doesn't mean the beginning of the season, could be the tail end of the season, but they plan on opening it. So before they officially move to Miami Freedom Park, they should do something that honors those teams, like you said, because so many of them played at Lockhart. And if you've watched any of our construction videos, so I don't know if you know this, Joe, but we did a bunch of construction videos. I was at that construction site every single weekend while they built that site. And I walked around and I filmed it and we made vlogs on that every single week. And there are pipes underground that are branded Lockhart. So Lockhart in some form or fashion is still alive on that site because the pipes are printed with Lockhart because this was still the Lockhart project until it was done, until it was finally finished and then became Inter Miami Stadium and then later Drive Pink. But it is branded down to the underground Lockhart Stadium forever and ever. But before we end this, you do have, and I have it up on the screen, you do have a fun event coming up Friday night for those of us that are Fusion fans. And it is crazy that you're a Dallas or a Texas guy, Dallas, but you're going to be down here throwing a Miami Fusion reunion with our buddy, and tell us about it.
Yeah, so I've got a couple plugs. This is the biggest one. So number one, like Peter said, Friday, October 6th at Mickey Byron's Irish Pub in Hollywood, Florida. Shout out to Mark Rowe, the owner, who has been phenomenal partner in this. From 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern, we've got a Miami Fusion reunion, and we're going to do a live podcast recording of 25 for 25, the story of the Miami Fusion from those who lived it. Jim Rooney and I are going to co-host it, and there's going to be different Fusion folks, players, staff, coaches that we're going to bring up and sort of rotate through the panel to share a few stories. And the goal is a couple of things. Number one, everybody that I talked to that were associated with the Fusion said that they didn't get an opportunity to have closure when the team ended because it happened so abruptly. So this is an opportunity to give closure. This is an opportunity to tap into that sort of post-game environment that people remember so fondly. And it's also a family reunion. Everybody I've spoken to has talked about the family atmosphere of the Fusion. And of course, you see that today with La Familia with Inter Miami. So we encourage people who were diehards of the Fusion and those that are curious about the Fusion and are Inter Miami fans to come and support, enjoy the show. I believe we're going to have some pint glass specials that you can you can purchase and take home with you. So more to come on that. And there's going to be a few, maybe a few giveaways and whatnot. So it's going to be exciting. So definitely check it out. I've got an Eventbrite link that I'm sharing on Instagrams, and there's no charge, but we encourage you to reserve a spot just because it helps us from a numbers perspective.
How many people? Yeah.
And the last thing I'll plug is been very fortunate. I do this as a passion project, and it's solo, and I appreciate everybody's time they've taken to listen and also to be interviewed on the show. But the podcast has been nominated for Best International Podcast at the British Football Content Awards. I'm going to be going to Liverpool, England in November for the award ceremony to continue to show up and talk about our beloved Miami Fusion. So if you have a moment and you go to @football.content.awards on Instagram, or you can go to footballcontentawards.com/voting. And if you go to Instagram and tag @MiamiFusionPod, that counts as one vote. And if you go to the website, you can choose 25 for 25 in the best international podcast category. That counts as one vote. But regardless, whether or not I win, I'm excited to tell people in England about this magical team in South Florida. So appreciate
That's awesome. That's awesome. Congrats on getting nominated. That's awesome. Yeah, like I said, you definitely, have interviewed so many people. And I'll be honest, I haven't listened to many of them, but I was scrolling through it today and I was just like, oh, I remember that guy. Oh, I remember. What's he up to today? So many guys that you're curious. I'm sure you talk about the old times, but I'm hoping you also cover like what they're doing now. And because, there was several people in that list that, it'd be interesting to hear from. So, yeah, I'm hoping to be there with you on Friday night. So
Yes.
if I go, we'll probably end up doing a vlog of your event. So you'll get publicity from our vlog as well. And also being we're close with Jim, so we love that he's a part of this as well. There was a question here that Ed was asking. Will you be going to the Inter Miami game this Saturday?
Yes, I will. So there's several folks that are going to be with me. So obviously we know that a lot of people that I know that are going to be coming to the event. I'm not going to share. You got to show up and see who might be coming to the reunion event. Do currently work for Inter Miami in some capacity, so they'll be there. But then there's other people like myself and Jim and a few other folks that are coming in from out of town that used to play and or work for the Fusion.
We still got some guys in town that maybe
That's
maybe
right.
show
That's
up,
right. That's right. And so we're all going to be going to the game. We're going to be in section 124, rows 19 and 20. So opposite end of the supporter section as far as I understand it. So, but yeah, if you see us, I believe if my wife allows me, I believe I'll be wearing one of these Fusion shirts into the game. And I only say allow because Peter, here's something that I don't know if people know. I might look super young in the face, but my other parts of me may have grown just a bit in the 25 years, right? So.
Sure, yeah. And so, what Ed's in here saying we got to meet up with you.
Yes.
What I would recommend, for Ed and I, a good meeting spot, the Heineken Bar. So if this is more on the east near Gate 2. So if you go into Gate 2, you're going to run into this big. Now, there are stands in the way a little bit, but the Heineken Bar is still there. It used to be a good, there used to be tables and all that, but then they had to put these corner stands because Messi. But still, that's kind of like the place that for me and Ed, that's kind of our meeting place where we tell people that's where we're going to be. It's just an easy place to find you. Come in on Gate 2. Boom, it's right there. So I would recommend it's come hang out over at the Heineken Bar for a few minutes, and maybe everybody can find you. If not, go hang out by 124, somewhere in that area, and look for Joe.
That's right.
All right. Well, everybody, again, if you didn't get the message, I'm trying to put it back up. Mickey Burns in Hollywood. It's right there near downtown. Been there many, many times. It's also the bar where they have they're a U.S. soccer bar. So 8 p.m. Go watch them do their podcast at the same time. Go hang out with all the old Fusion people. I'm curious if One World One Goal shows up. She should be there, but should be a lot of fun. Hey, Joe, besides your event, how can people find you and everything that you're doing?
So there's two ways. So if you're on Instagram, it's at Miami Fusion Pod. That's also on Facebook as well. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I refuse to call it X or 10 or whatever. If you're on Twitter, I'm at Detox Joe, DTALKS Joe. But if you are just, hey, I just want to get to the podcast, I don't care about the social media stuff, you can just go to MiamiFusionPod.com. And I've just got a real basic landing page. It takes you to whichever listening platform you prefer to listen to, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or somewhere else, and you can go check it out. We just released a bonus episode with Alexi Lawless where he talked about his time playing in MLS and also his time working with Doug Hamilton, who was fundamental in shaping that 2001 Supporter Shield winning team. Yep, there it is.
Right here. All right, great stuff. Oops, wrong one. All right, thanks so much. I mean, like I said, I'm looking forward to the event. I'm looking forward to spending some time listening to some of your interviews. Alexi is always a favorite of mine to listen to. A lot. He's, people love him. Real quick story. At one of these preseason games, Lexi was playing for my New York Revolution. He's sitting on the bench next to Mike Burns, and the fence for the walkway and everything at Lockhart Stadium, the fence was right up against where the players would sit. And I'm sitting there talking to my buddy, just talking how I think Mike Burns is not, worth much. Like, he was on the national team, and I don't get it. I don't think he's nothing. He's a piece of garbage. I'm talking trash about Mike Burns, not really paying attention to the fact that he could probably hear me, and everything I did was pretty rude. But Alexi Lawless, he gave me the dirtiest look and told me and shushed me back in those days. And I was like, oh, I got shushed by Alexi Lawless because he didn't like me talking crap about his teammate. So
you got to put that on your resume, Peter.
There you go.
By Alexi Lawless. Right. And then list all of Alexi's accomplishments, but then tie it back to.
Yeah, I got shushed by Alexi Lawless. Yeah, I'm sure he remembers that. Anyways, thanks so much for joining us, Joe, and look forward to your event on Friday.
Thanks, Peter. Appreciate
All right,
it.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And go check out his Miami Fusion pod as well.